When Lana's poor family sells her off to marry the village drunk, her life seems sealed in misery until a mysterious stranger named Kael pays her bride price in full and takes her away. But Kael isn't a hero. He's the most feared alpha in the region, bound by a deadly curse only his fated mate can break. Drawn into a world of power, secrets, and desire, Lana must face the truth about who and what Kael really is. The closer she gets to him, the stronger the pull between them becomes, and the more dangerous it is for her heart. In the shadows of his curse lies something sacred, something dark, and only she can decide if she's brave enough to claim it. Dear listener, if this is your first time listening to any of my stories, kindly comment below where you're watching from. Now, listen to the story of Lana. I didn't cry when my mother placed the borrowed veil over my head. There was nothing left in me to spill. Not grief, not hope. I had already cried myself dry a week ago. All I could do was to lock my emotions as the worn fabric was tied around my wrists. "You'll be a wife by sundown," my mother whispered, smoothing the lace with her trembling fingers. "Try to be obedient, okay? He's not a kind man, but he has land. And goats." I nodded like a puppet. Obedient. Silent. Sold. The village square simmered under the late morning sun as my father led me through it with his hand clamped around my elbow like a shackle. Everyone stared, some with pity, some with a curious look, and some with a smug on their faces. I was the pretty one, after all. And pretty girls never stayed poor for long, not when there were drunkards with coins and fathers too proud to beg. My groom-to-be was already waiting, Roth. He had broad shoulders, broken teeth, and wine-stained lips. The kind of man who laughed too loudly and always had a bruise on someone else's face. When he smiled at me, I caught the familiar gap where his supposedly canine should have been. "I'll keep her fed," Roth said, tossing a leather pouch onto the wooden table, "and she'll keep me warm." A few of his drinking friends let out a cheer that sounded more like mockery. "The bride price is to be counted," my father said, reaching for the pouch. "It's all there," Roth replied with a smirk. "Not like she's worth more." I kept my eyes away from him, away from my parents. Instead, I stared at the tree line that marked the edge of the village. It was a place no one went after dark, the place of teeth and howls. The wolves. That's when he stepped out of the trees. No one heard him coming, nor noticed him walking toward my direction. One moment, there was the chatter of trade and laughter. Then the next, there was a thick and sudden silence. He was dressed in black. His outfit didn't look like that of the soft linen of merchants or the rough hide of hunters. He walked straight toward the table without a word. "Who the hell?" Roth started, puffed up with alcohol and false authority. The stranger didn't look at him. He looked at me, and for one heartbeat, maybe two, the world cracked. His cold blue eyes locked mine as he stood still like a stone, while some strands of his silver hair caught the sunlight. Something ancient without a name reached through his gaze and wrapped around my lungs. It wasn't hunger, not lust. Something that felt like a claim which made my heart stuttered. He then placed a heavy satchel on the table. The thud of it hitting the wood was way louder than Roth's laugh had ever been. 10 times her bride price, the stranger said with his voice quite low and steady. Paid in full. Gasps, whispers filled the village square. My father's hands faltered over the pouch. "Is this a joke?" Roth demanded. No, this man's eyes didn't leave mine, not even for a second. "She comes with me. You can't just..." The stranger finally turned his head toward Roth. Just a look. No threat, no movement. But Roth stepped back. Then again. His mouth worked, but no sound came out this time. No one tried to stop the man when he stepped to my side. Not my father, not Roth, not even the elder meant to bless the union. I opened my mouth to speak, but I found no words. "Come." He didn't touch me. He didn't need to. I just followed. The village grew smaller behind us as we walked down the dirt road. My wrists still ached where the cords from the veil had been tied. Then I saw something waiting at the edge of the forest. A black car. I stopped in my tracks as I recalled hearing of cars from traveling traders, but I had never seen one in real life. It looked strange and powerful, with dark, shiny glass and thick black wheels. He opened the back door. "Get in." I stared at him and asked, "What is this?" "It's a car," he said. "It will take us to where we're going." I hesitated, but there was no point arguing, so I slowly slid inside. The seat was soft and the air cool, smelling faintly of leather and rain. He sat beside me while shutting the door. A moment later, the car roared to life, and without thinking, I jumped and gripped his arm. He was solid and warm, and the steady beat of his pulse under my fingers somehow made me feel both safer and more afraid. "Stop being a scared cat, it won't eat you," he said quietly, though his eyes stayed on the road ahead. Heat rose to my face as I quickly pulled my hand back, but my heart was still pounding. The ground outside sped past faster than my feet could ever run. We left the dirt road and joined a wide black road with white lines painted down the middle. Soon, the quiet hills disappeared, replaced by a place I could barely understand. Buildings stood shoulder to shoulder, some made of glass that shone in the sunlight. People walked quickly along the streets. Their clothes were nothing like in the village. Bright colors, short skirts, sharp suits, shirts with strange words and pictures. Then strange sounds filled my ears, loud horns, fast music, voices calling out. Shops with glowing signs lined the streets, some blinking with colors I had never seen outside of flowers. Pink, blue, green. Cars passed us in both directions, some small, some huge, all moving faster than I thought possible. I pressed my hand against the window, watching it all blur by. "Where are we?" I asked. "The city," he said simply. We passed markets with fruit piled high, women laughing into small glowing boxes they held to their ears, men walking in dark coats like they were in a hurry to be somewhere important. I saw coffee shops with tables on the sidewalk, steam rising from cups as people talked and laughed. The car kept moving until the busy streets grew quiet again. The tall buildings faded, replaced by wide roads lined with trees. Large gates guarded long driveways, each leading to houses bigger than anything I'd ever imagined. Finally, we turned into one of them. At the end of the road stood his house. It had black stone, tall windows, and sharp lines. It looked both new and very old at the same time. "This is where you'll stay," he said as the car stopped. I didn't move. My heart was still racing. I didn't know if I had been taken somewhere safe or into something far more dangerous. I was still trying to decide if it was a house or a fortress when I noticed the statues. Two of them stood on either side of the wide front steps. Wolves. They were carved from dark stone, their heads raised as if howling at a silent moon. Their eyes were narrow, their teeth bared, and the rain had darkened their coats until they looked almost alive. A shiver ran down my spine. What was his connection with the wolves? He stepped out first, and I followed, my shoes crunching on the gravel drive. Up close, the place was even bigger, with its black stone walls stretching high and its windows tall like watchful eyes. When the door opened, I froze. Inside was nothing like the quiet, simple homes I knew. Bright lights glowed from the ceiling, the air smelled faintly of flowers, and the floors were so shiny I could see my reflection in them. And people. There were so many people. Women in neat black dresses and white aprons moved quickly across the wide entrance hall, some carrying folded towels, others balancing silver trays. A few men in matching suits walked past without looking at me, their footsteps perfectly in sync. Then a woman in her 50s came forward. Her hair was pulled into a tight bun, and her dark dress was cut perfectly straight. She stopped in front of the stranger and gave a small bow. "Young Master Kael," she said. "Welcome home. Bestie, if you've gotten to this point, it means you're already hooked to the story. Kindly support me by subscribing to my channel." Her eyes moved to me, and then she gave a polite but curious smile. "And this must be the young lady." Before I could answer, he said, "Get her ready." My head snapped toward him. Ready? Ready for what? He didn't look at me. He was already handing his coat to one of the men. The woman nodded. Yes, young Master Kael. She turned back to me with a softer smile. Come with me, miss. We'll have you bathed and changed. Bathed? Changed? My stomach nodded. My mind leapt to the only thing that made sense. Another wedding. Was that it? Was I traded from one groom to another? I didn't move. What's going on? I demanded, my voice low. He finally looked at me with his unreadable blue eyes. You'll find out soon enough. A cold weight sank into my stomach. Tear. The kind that made your hands feel numb and your knees weak. The head maid placed a gentle but firm hand on my arm. This way, miss. I followed her down a long hallway, my footsteps sinking into carpets so soft they swallowed the sound. Gold light spilled from crystal lamps along the walls, and paintings in heavy frames watched me as I passed. When she opened a door, I stopped dead. The room was bigger than my family's entire house. The walls were painted a soft cream with gold edges, the ceiling high enough for a bird to fly in. A huge bed stood in the middle, its posts carved with twisting vines, and the blankets looked like clouds. Curtains as red as wine hung over the tall windows. It felt like I had stepped into a royal palace. Come, the head maid said again, guiding me through another door at the side of the room. The bathroom was just as shocking. The tub wasn't a wooden barrel like I knew, but a great white oval, big enough for 3 people, with water steaming inside. The floor was polished stone, and strange silver taps poured water without a bucket in sight. 3 girls, all about my age, stood waiting. Their dresses were simple gray, their hair neatly tied back, their hands ready with cloths and bottles. I froze. I can bathe myself, I muttered. The head maid's voice stayed polite, but there was no room for refusal. The young master gave instructions. We must prepare you. I didn't like the way she said, prepare. The girls moved quickly, undoing the ties of my old dress before I could argue more. I clutched the fabric to my chest, but they worked with practiced speed, steering me toward the tub. The warm water wrapped around me, but I couldn't relax. They scrubbed my skin, washed my hair with something that smelled sweet and sharp, and rinsed me with water that never went cold. When I was lifted out, I was wrapped in soft towels, so thick I almost disappeared inside them. Then they brought the clothes. It wasn't a dress. It wasn't anything I'd seen before. It was a piece of clothing that made my cheeks burn, a thin black silk with lacy edges, barely enough to be called clothes at all. Is this your wedding gown? I asked the head maid, half joking, half hoping she'd say yes. She gave a small, almost pitying smile. No, miss, but don't worry, it won't hurt that much. The words froze me in place. Hurt? What did she mean? She gave no further response. She simply placed a heavier black robe over my shoulders, hiding me from sight. Come, she said again. We walked down another hall, which was a more quiet one with a cooler air. At the end of it stood a large black door. The head maid knocked once, and mysteriously opened on its own. The room beyond was way larger than mine, but dimly lit. Without a word, the maid stepped behind me and slid the robe from my shoulders. Cool air kissed my bare skin, and I swallowed hard. She didn't meet my eyes as she stepped back through the door and locked it. The sound made my chest tighten. From the shadows, he appeared, bare-chested, his pale hair catching the faint light, those cold blue eyes fixed on me, making me feel as if he could see straight through my skin. My breath caught. Heat coiled low in my stomach, the strange kind that made you want to step forward and run away at the same time. Was this how marriages were done here? He didn't speak for a long moment, just looked at me like I was something rare and his. Then, in a voice as smooth as it was sharp, he said one word, strip. My mind went blank. The word rang in my ears like a bell. Strip. I stood frozen, my fingers curling into the silk at my sides. My throat felt tight, my mind caught between confusion and fear. What? My voice was barely a whisper. He took one slow step toward me as he said, You heard me. Every instinct in me screamed to run. But there was nowhere to go, not when the door behind me was locked and he was between me and anything else. I don't. Do you think I paid your bride price? His voice was low and steady. To have you hide from me? I swallowed hard. My heartbeat felt loud enough for him to hear. His eyes softened just for a second. I think, or maybe I imagined it before sharpening again. It won't hurt. Not if you listen. The words reminded me of the head maid, and a strange, cold understanding began to creep into my chest. This wasn't a wedding. This was something else, something sacred, something dangerous. And it had nothing to do with kindness. He waited, watching me like he was reading every thought in my head. When I still didn't move, his hand shot out and wrapped around my waist, pulling me forward until my chest brushed his bare skin. I gasped with the heat of him shocking against the cool air. Then his other hand slid lower, over the curve of my hip, and grabbed my butt. A sharp breath escaped me. My heart was a wild drum in my ears. His touch wasn't gentle, but it wasn't cruel either. It was claiming. His hands moved slowly, tracing over my sides, my back, the dip of my spine. Every nerve in my body felt like it had woken up at once, sparking with something I just couldn't name. This was the first time a man had touched me like this. So close, so bold, so confusing. And just when I thought I might speak, he let go, leaving me standing there, dizzy in the middle of my own thoughts. I don't like repeating myself, he said, his voice softer now, but dangerous all the same. His eyes caught mine, pinning me in place. Strip, Lana. I swallowed hard, my hands trembling as I obeyed. Slowly, piece by piece, I let the fabric fall away until I stood bare under his gaze. He didn't move for a while, only stood there, bare-chested, his gaze fixed on me like I was the only thing that existed in the world. I didn't have to guess what he thought. I could see it in the way his eyes darkened, in the faint curve at the corner of his mouth. On the bed, he said. My legs felt weak as I moved, climbing onto the soft mattress. The air was heavy and my breaths felt loud in the stillness. Spread your legs. I hesitated, my mind screaming with questions I couldn't form into words, but my body listened before I could think better of it. He moved closer, dropping to one knee, his presence filling the space between us. My pulse hammered so hard I could feel it in my throat. I dared a glance down only to snap my eyes shut when I caught him looking at me there, like I was something rare. The next moment, warmth brushed against me, and my breath caught. A strange alien feeling bloomed low in my stomach. It was not pain, not quite fear, but something that made my thoughts scatter and my body tense. I didn't understand what was happening. I didn't understand him. Every part of me was on edge, caught between wanting to pull away and wanting to lean into whatever this was. The heat from his body rolled over me in waves, too hot, too close. His hands moved as though he was trying to claim every inch of me, but there was something wrong in the way his fingers twitched. It twitched in the way his grip tightened like he was holding himself back from tearing. A sound rumbled in his chest, low and dangerous, making my stomach knot. I tried to push back, but his gaze locked me in place. His blue eyes? No, they weren't blue anymore. They were darker, almost black, ringed with a faint, unnatural gold. My breath caught. No, it couldn't be. Those eyes, those teeth. I'd heard whispers about the things that prowled past the tree line, wolves that walked like men who could kill with a snap of their jaws. He was one of them, a werewolf. His jaw clenched, his nostrils flaring like he was breathing me in. I thought. His voice was broken low. I could wait. The words meant nothing to me, but the hunger in them did. His hands slid up, almost shaking now, and for a moment I thought he would. He ripped himself away with a growl that made the walls hum. One hand slammed down on the table beside the bed with his knuckles turning white. The other fumbled for the silver cord by the wall. The door opened almost instantly. "Take her," he said, his voice rough like gravel. The head maid was at my side before I could move, pulling the robe tight around me. My mind spun as I could still hear the echo of that growl in my ears, still see those not quite human eyes in the dark. The headmaid shut the door behind us, leaving me in the glow of the golden lamps. My knees gave way, and I sat hard on the edge of the bed, clutching the robe tighter, like it could erase the memory of his hands on me. My heart wouldn't slow. Every beat was too loud, too fast, like it knew something I didn't. I looked up at the maid, the same woman who had bathed me, dressed me, and walked me straight into the jaws of whatever he was. "Tell me about him," I said, my voice raw. Her gaze flickered to mine, then to the door. "I can't. You have to," I pressed, standing despite the tremble in my legs. I swallowed hard. "If I'm the one, then I need to know what's going on, what he is, and what he meant." She froze, her hands tightening on the folded cloth she was carrying. For a moment, I thought she might break if she spilled the truth just to quiet me. But she shook her head, her lips pressed tight. "It's not my place," she said softly, almost like an apology. My skin prickled, because that meant there was a truth to tell. The maid's eyes softened, and she let out a slow, tired breath, like she'd been holding it in for years. "I shouldn't be saying this," she murmured, her voice almost trembling. "But if you are truly the one, then maybe you deserve to know why he brought you here." I gripped the edge of the bed. "Then tell me." She glanced once more toward the door, then stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Our Alpha is not just feared for his power," she said. "He's feared because he's cursed. A darkness lives in him, the one that grows stronger every year. And the only way to end it," she hesitated, her gaze meeting mine, "is to claim his fated mate, to mark her, in body and in soul." My breath caught. Fated mate? Her eyes held mine with a strange mix of hope and pity. "You." The word hit me harder than a slap. My mouth went dry. "You mean?" "Yes." Her voice hardened now. "If the bond is completed, the curse may finally break. If not, the darkness will consume him, and everyone under his command." I didn't realize I was shaking until the bed frame rattled under my hands. My mind screamed to run, but my heart remembered the way his eyes had burned when he looked at me. The door clicked shut, leaving me alone in the room that suddenly felt too big, too silent. Fated mate. The words rolled over and over in my head like stones in a river, cutting into me each time. I sat on the edge of the bed with my hands twisted together in my lap and my tight chest. The maid's voice kept echoing. "If the bond is completed, the curse may finally break. A bond. With him." It really makes my day whenever I get notified of a new subscriber. Would you mind making my day today, bestie? I'd only known the man for hours, and already he had dragged me away from my family, stripped me down to my body and soul, and looked at me like I was something he was born to take. And now I know why. I pushed my fingers into the sheets, like maybe the fabric could ground me. But it didn't work. My mind was a storm. Part of me wanted to run, to find the front gates, the strange black car, and the road that could take me back to my old life. But another part remembered the heat in his stare. The way his voice seemed to reach somewhere deeper than my bones. The way I'd felt that pull toward him before I even knew his name. And that scared me more than the curse. I stood and paced the length of the room, glancing at the heavy curtains and the high windows. Outside, the night air carried faint sounds, the rustle of leaves, the distant hum of the city. And something else. Something low. A growl? My heartbeat picked up. I didn't want to believe it, but the image kept forming in my mind. His pale hair, those piercing eyes, and teeth far sharper than any man should have. The maid's words had been careful, but I'd read the truth between them. He wasn't just a man. He was something else. Something from the shadows. A werewolf. And yet, call it madness, call it the fate bond, call it whatever the hell it was, my heart whispered for me to go back to that room. The one that had left me breathless. The one that terrified me to my core. Truth was, I was terrified. Yes. But there was another truth buried underneath it, which was my heart wanted him. Wild, reckless, dangerous. I felt like he was mine. It was the next night when I finally gave in. The halls were quiet and the moonlight spilling through the tall windows. I slipped out of my room with my bare feet making no sound on the cold floor. The big door was just ahead. My pulse raced as I reached for the handle. Slowly I pushed it open. The room was dark, but the moonlight fell across the bed. And I found him. He was there, sleeping. I stepped closer. His face was calm, almost peaceful. Without the sharp edge of his stare, he looked different, softer. Before I could stop myself, my hand moved. My fingers brushed along the line of his jaw, up to his cheek. My heart was in my throat. Then my fingers traced his lips. His eyes snapped open. In one swift move, his hand shot out. The world spun, and before I knew it, I was on the bed, his weight above me and my wrists pinned high over my head. His grip didn't loosen one bit as his blue eyes locked on mine, which were sharp, even in the dim light. "If you missed me that much," he murmured, his voice low and dangerous, "you could have just said so." His gaze drifted over my face, lingering in a way that made my skin burn. Or, "Did you miss my touch?" Heat rushed to my cheeks. I turned my head away, staring at the pillow instead of those piercing eyes. "I just came to check up on you." He gave a deep, amused chuckle. "Check up on me? When I almost tore you apart last night?" My throat tightened, but I still found the courage to whisper. "But you didn't." Something flickered in his eyes, something that made my heart pound even faster. He smiled, slow and knowing. "I just happened to have good control of myself," he said, his voice brushing over my skin like a shadow. His gaze sharpened. "Tell me, you don't fear me? Even with all the villagers' tales about the big bad werewolf?" I looked straight into his blue eyes and said, without shaking, "No." For a moment, something in him broke. The cold in his face softened, and I felt his hold weaken just a little. I didn't think. I pushed at his chest, and he let me, falling back against the bed. In the next heartbeat, I was straddling him, my legs apart on his stomach, my breath fast. And before I knew why or how, I leaned down and kissed him. I didn't know what I was thinking. I only knew that once my lips touched his, there was no turning back. I felt him stiffen under me with his hands gripping my hips. Then his lips curved in a faint smile. "That's not a kiss," he murmured. "Let me teach you." And before I could breathe, his mouth crashed into mine. He kissed me so deeply, so hungrily, that neither of us had time to think, let alone breathe. His hand slid to the edge of my robe, and with one smooth motion, he pulled it away. The black fabric fell to the floor, revealing the daring lingerie I had boldly chosen to wear myself. His eyes darkened, and he didn't waste a single heartbeat. The straps slid off my shoulders, the cool air brushing against my skin just before his mouth claimed one of my peaky mountains. The heat of him, the way his lips and tongue moved, made my thoughts scatter like leaves in the wind. My breath came in short bursts, my fingers curling into his hair. I didn't even realize when the sound left my lips. "Kael!" A soft, breathless moan of his name. He froze. Slowly, he lifted his head, his blue eyes searching my face with something raw and unreadable. No one spoke his name. To everyone else, he was Alpha or Young Master. But this fragile human in his arms, she had moaned it like it belonged to her. A slow smile curved his lips, the kind that made my stomach twist. "Then I hope you are aware that I won't take it easy on you," he said, voice low and rough. "I know," I whispered, my eyes never leaving his. "And I trust you. You won't hurt me." Something shifted in him. His body trembled, and for the first time there was warmth, something dangerously close to love glimmering in his eyes. He leaned in, kissing me again, softer this time, as if sealing a promise. "I'll be gentle," he murmured against my mouth. Then his fingers trailed down, slow and deliberate, touching me in ways that sent shivers rushing up my spine. He stayed above me, his body caging mine, his touch exploring carefully yet making my heart race faster. Then he settled between my legs. My hands gripped his arms as I felt his member trying to find its way inside me. I bit my lip, fighting the burn in my eyes. It hurts, I admitted, my voice trembling. His hand came up to brush my cheek, his thumb warm against my skin. I'm sorry, he whispered, his voice thick. But the pain, it will fade soon. Before I could answer, he moved slowly, carefully pushing forward just enough to make my breath hitch. My nails dug into his arms, my head tipping back against the pillow. He paused, letting me breathe, letting me adjust. Bit by bit, he moved again, each slow push sending a strange mix of ache and heat through me. The sharp edge of pain began to melt, replaced by a warmth that made my legs tighten around him. His gaze stayed locked on mine the entire time, as if he was making sure I was still with him. His name slipped past my lips before I could stop it. Kael. And then I felt his whole body tense. Damn it, he muttered, his voice low and rough. This human girl, she wants to end me. He moved faster but still gentle, as if he didn't want to break me. The sounds leaving my mouth didn't even feel like mine as they filled the room, mixing with the sound of his breathing. Then he took my hand, holding it firm. My eyes widened when he brought my wrist to his mouth. I thought it would hurt, but when his teeth sank in, all I felt was heat rushing through me. The strange warmth spread from my wrist to my chest, to my very soul. My head tilted back, my mind gone. His pace grew uneven, his grip on me tighter, until his body shuddered above mine. Heat poured into me, and I knew deep inside that something had changed. Something had been claimed. Something that now bound us together. At first, I didn't understand. The moment he shuddered above me, the air in the room shifted. It felt heavier, thicker, as if the very walls were holding their breath. Then, a strange light began to bloom. It was soft and gold, spilling from where his mark burned on my wrist. My heart pounded so hard it hurt. The warmth spread through me, but it wasn't just mine. I felt him too. I felt his heartbeat in my chest. His pain. His longing. His relief. Somewhere deep inside, something was breaking. Chains I couldn't see but somehow knew were there. The air filled with the sound of a low, rumbling growl that wasn't threatening. It was freeing. He collapsed against me, his forehead pressing to mine, his breath ragged. His eyes, glowing faintly now, looked at me as if I had just saved his life. Maybe I had. You don't know what you've done for me, he whispered, his voice shaking. You've freed me, Lana. My throat tightened. Then I'm glad it was me. His fingers brushed my cheek like I was the most fragile thing in the world. You're mine now? Forever. Something warm settled in my chest, and before I could stop myself, the words slipped out, I love you. His breath caught, and then he smiled, a soft one, almost disbelieving before kissing me like he would never let go. I love you too. Besties, hope this story made your day as much as your subscription would brighten mine. Here's hoping you'd also tune in to my next story. Lots of love.